All right, in this video, I'm going to go through this chat interface that I've built for my blog where you can have a conversation with my writing. So what does that look like first? Well, if you click one of the pre-populated questions here, such as what is the programming bug, then immediately right in my website, you get a response from the ghost of my writing. And you may notice that you also were immediately streamed back related blog posts. So what is this feature? Why would I build it? What's the point? So to begin with, the programming bug is a concept that I wrote about in this one blog post that was popular, where I talk about first figuring out if you have the passion or the interest in programming, because that's what drives you forward forever. And you could come and read this blog post if you prefer to. However, it's on the long side, and everyone's got plenty to read today. So the idea is you can come here and you can ask questions, and you are in fact getting an answer that is coming from a tool that can read or has read all of my writing. So everything that I have ever written. But you can also ask free-form questions. And if you do that, then you'll get back, a real response, right? So what is this experience? How is it possible? How does it work? Well, we're actually going to go through all of that in excruciating detail, because I've written a blog post or a tutorial where I go through exactly how to build this, exactly how it works end to end. And we're going to talk through the architecture, the workflow. We're going to talk about embeddings. We're going to talk about the backend API route code that uses the latest from Vercel's AI SDK. We're going to talk about the front end code, how the related blog post works. Why build this at all? Well, it's the same reason I build most things. It's for practice. It's for understanding the architecture, right? RAG is retrieval augmented generation, and we're going to talk more about that in this video. But essentially what you will learn in this video and in this architecture can be applied to any problem, right? So it's not just text data, it's not just my blog, it's any proprietary data or private data that you might have that you could use to enrich an application. The other reason that I needed this for myself, or decided that I needed it enough to justify building it, is that I blog a lot. And so it is becoming kind of unwieldy to just come through here and read every post, or even to go back and find some of the favorite posts that I might have written in the past that you may have been familiar with. And so part of what I'm doing here is providing an alternate interface, if you will, where folks can chat with my writing and get the information that they need that way. It was also a fun experiment because you can essentially ask questions of me, even if I'm not here, not standing behind the curtain of my website answering questions directly, but you can essentially ask questions of me even when I'm not around, because so much of my writing has made it into this retrieval augmented generation pipeline. So let's take a little bit more of a deeper look at the chat experience, right? So there are some pre-populated questions, and the reason I found this useful is that if folks are not already familiar with my writing, then extra work to figure out what's the actual question they want to ask. And so just providing some questions you can double click and ask quickly, I found is useful. But you can really ask any question of my writing. And so you can say, what is your favorite AI assisted developer tool and why? And so we'll notice, there's this little just indication that, hey, I'm thinking, right? Because there's going to be like a second delay. But you'll also notice that as soon as you ask a question and we get a response back, we start streaming back the response, right? So just as you are familiar with chatting with ChatGPT, it's important to note that you don't just get, a 30-second delay or a two-minute silence and then a giant wall of writing. You get a streaming text response, right? So it feels as though someone is chatting with you, and especially because it's going to take a long time to complete, your actual answer, this streaming interface is really important. You can also ask questions about, so I do a lot of writing about AI assisted developer tools, or I could say, what is your favorite auto complete tool for developers and why? And then you'll notice that as soon as the response starts, the related posts also update. And this is something I really wanted because, chat is interesting. It can be helpful. It's certainly helpful when you're working with some of the most advanced models like LLMs. But I I think there's just an immense opportunity for a richer experience when you build something that not only answers your question, but also can immediately provide additional context. And note that, there's rich visuals. If I click this link, it'll go directly to the blog post in question. And I think it's just a nice way to kind of get folks what they're looking for quickly. And the reason that this tutorial is hopefully interesting and of note to people is that, again, this retrieval augmented generation process, or this workflow and this architecture that we're going to look at, can really be applied to anything. So imagine that this is your e-commerce site and you already have traffic, people are searching for things, and now what would happen if they started to have a rich chat experience that could also be, recommending to them related products, or it could keep them in a queue somewhere that they could revisit later. But really, think about one of the benefits of a retrieval augmented generation pipeline is that it really condenses the search space or the interface down, so that a user only needs to know how to ask a simple question in natural language in order to get back, very detailed, structured responses, structured data as well. Okay, so we have looked a little bit at the sort of chat interface and experience itself, and that's fun to play with, but let's also now take a look at what's really going to make up the meat of this video series, which is this blog post that I wrote that is essentially a deep dive tutorial on how to build this end to end. Okay, so let's take a quick overview look at what this tutorial comprises, and then we will start going through it piece by piece. To begin with, let's talk through the data flow. I find that that's helpful when you're, first trying to understand a new system. Okay, so as you can see here, there's really two major pieces in this chat flow that we're going to talk through. So there's the backend, right? And that's handling everything after the chat interface. So all the things you can't see as the end user, that's the embeddings, that's the vector search, that's bundling up the context and sending it to the LLM, and then streaming back the response from the LLM to the front end. We've got plenty going on in the chat interface. That's a React app that we will talk through. And then the other piece here is really the initial data ingest and pre-processing that's required to get your Pinecone vector database to be a knowledge store that has all of your relevant content. So in my case, this is all of the relevant context from my blog, and that's all of the MDX files, and we'll look at those in a second, that comprise my blog.